So how many people here have used Alexa? Okay. Then I probably don't have to explain why the virtual assistant is such a powerful piece of software, right? It is now, for once, we are able to interface with our software the human way, okay? Using natural language, whether it is text or voice, okay? So, what the virtual assistant can do for you is that it keeps track of your accounts, your passwords, all your data, and you just have to say what you want to do. You don't have to open one website after the other or one mobile app after the other, because you just say, this is what I want. And knowing your personal data and information, they can customize and personalize according to what you want. Admittedly today, all the natural language is not quite there yet, but we all know it is just a matter of time. Okay, so it is a very powerful interface, and it has really got the opportunity to be the intermediate between you and all the different software. And as a result, it is an extremely profitable piece of software. This is where you're going to see a lot of your ads. They will recommend services to you. It will buy all kinds of things for you online. So now the question is, who is going to provide this virtual assistant? Are we going to see a monopoly? Will there be one company that reads a lot of the personal data and provide this virtual assistant? Will this company be controlling this platform? Will they have a say on which services that will be shown to you? Will there be, you will be searching through one particular search engine, or are you going to buy from one particular company? Okay, so there are a lot of interesting questions here. And if there is a single company that provides this very powerful software called the virtual assistant, what are we going to do with open competition? And if we don't have that, what happens to innovation? And if that goes away, then the consumer suffers. So is there an alternative to that? I think that the only reasonable alternative is the open version of this, the open system. If you think about the virtual assistant, it's kind of like your new personal operating system, because it provides the interaction between you and all the different pieces of software. And if you think about operating system, we have a really good example of when open software wins. And that is, we have Unix and Linux. The work started way back. And by the time we got the mobile devices, now we have Android and iPhone. At least we have some competing OSs. And if we didn't have this effort, what would that mean? Would we all be using Windows phones, for example? Okay, so there are some very curious questions behind this. I would say that there's another really good example of why open systems are the way to go, and that is, for example, the internet itself. In the early days, we have AOL. They're providing you with a walled garden, and they're providing, recommending the services to you. But we kind of have rejected that. It was like, we want to have an open internet. I want to be able to access anything, anybody, and any service that we want. So this is what we are doing in our research group, is that we want to build the world's first virtual assistant. Actually, we're not just saying it is the first open. We actually want it to be the best virtual assistant. I'm not saying that our group can compete with any of these large companies that are putting in so much effort into their virtual assistant. What I believe in is that if we can create the right platform, one that is general, one that honors privacy, one that allows everybody to compete, they can take this technology and build competing virtual assistants, then we can attract the researchers, the early adopters, and eventually commercial vendors, then we have a chance of making it the world's first, the world's best virtual assistant. So this platform that we are building has privacy and generality and, of course, natural language support. And I don't believe really that an open system of a commercial version can possibly succeed. You have to look at the future, and you have to build for the future. And so what I'm going to do today is that besides talking about the platform, I will also talk about the research results that we have and share with everybody here. So the projects right now, you can go to Thingpedia, edu. And we encourage everybody to help contribute and make this virtual assistant. And the virtual assistant is also available right now in the Google App Store. It is a very bare bones system, but it is very extensible, and a lot of people can, different people can contribute to it. And this work has just been recently been published, and it was presented at the World Wide Web Conference just last week in Australia. So let's talk about privacy, okay? And as a virtual assistant, it has access to all your accounts. And it interfaces between you and all your various private accounts. And what we have done is to make the virtual assistant Almond an open source software. Anybody can download it. It's on GitHub, and you can build on top of it. What it means is that you can take this virtual assistant and run it on your phone. You run it on the home server, or any company here wanting to build a virtual assistant can take advantage of this piece of software. We also imagined in the future that there will be cloud services that host your data. And our philosophy here is that there are people who care about privacy, and then there are people who don't. What we want is choice and open interoperability between different people. Okay, just like we have emails, there are various different large companies providing email, and now you have a choice about where to go. So that's how we provide privacy. How do we handle generality? And the answer is that Almond is a general entity, an agent, and what it knows is in an open source and crowdsourced repository. We call this repository Thingpedia, okay? We name it after Wikipedia. The concept here is that anybody who has an interface that they want other people to use, you are free and open to put it into this Thingpedia. As we collect all this information, anybody wanting to build a virtual assistant can just take advantage of this repository and build on top of that. We don't have to have these different proprietary platforms where we have to kind of put in our interface to one proprietary platform after another. You put it in there, and we distributed all possible proprietary platforms. We are open to cooperation. And what it means is that whatever information you put into Thingpedia, Almond can speak about it using the natural language. So for example, if you have a kid who have an Arduino car and wanted to have a natural language interface, enter this information into Thingpedia, and you will have the virtual assistant talking to, giving you the natural language interface to your toy project. So that's the basic idea behind Thingpedia. We know that, Wikipedia did really well because a lot of people contributed to it. We see that in the same way, there are many, many different local websites, different applications and devices, and I think that the only way to go is to have an open system so everybody can contribute and you can have interoperability across them. So that's the basic platform. And just a little bit more information about the Thingpedia, as I said, is like the Encyclopedia. So what you do here is that you can enter different devices. So for example, if you pick a device like Twitter, it has a whole bunch of different APIs. And we separate the APIs into 3 categories. There are the whens. It is when you monitor, when you are waiting for certain events, such as if you are waiting for, say, Trump tweets, okay? So for each of these interface, you provide a natural language and then the corresponding code, okay? So that's what you enter. There are a little bit more details, and you can check out the website about that. So there are 3 categories of things that you can do. There is the when, which is the what kind of events you're waiting for. Then there is the get, which is information that you can get. And then do, these are the actions that you can take. So at this point, we have crowdsourced about 45 devices, and we have about 187 functions. It is enough for us to do some experiments to learn how we make this platform work, and hopefully we have more people to contribute to this. So this is the high-level picture of what it looks like, of all the different functions that we have. You see a whole bunch of whens and gets and do's. Let's talk about the research side of things. The fun part is when you plug all these accounts and information into one single entity. And now you can have things interoperate across them, okay? And now that I have access to all my things, I would also like to be able to share with anybody else. And then me and my virtual assistant and my things can interact with you and your virtual assistant and your things. Okay, now the fun begins. So let me talk a little bit about interoperability. We said that there are a whole bunch of whens and gets and do's. Now you can plug and play and put them together in different ways. In a sense, these are the building blocks where you can write these mini programs. And you can, and then you can also add filters to put conditions into the statement. So here are just some examples. And so, for example, my student wanted to give me a better response than most of the other people who sent them email, and they would put a rule like, when I receive an email from my advisor, then send a message on SMS, okay? So these are all the customizations that they can do using this capability. So what we have here is an end-user programming problem, taking natural language, eventually translating into JavaScript. So Thingpedia is the little language snippets that we talked about earlier. We also introduced a domain-specific language called ThingTalk that is a programming language that is very close to the statements like when I tweet, share the text on LinkedIn, the code that corresponds to this is very similar. All the details about the credentials and communications and access control and all that is hidden by this language. Having this high-level language allows us to handle the translation problem. So I don't have the time to talk about the AI program, and we are building on top of Percy Lang's Semper approach. And we are happy to say that we did pretty well with all the primitives, and this is the first time you can use natural language to define these compound statements. The accuracy is still, just at 40%. If you let me give you 3 answers, it's about 50%. This is just the beginning. We believe that as time goes on, we will be able to improve that. And what we are giving people is a lot of flexibility to put different devices together in the ways they want. And when the natural language fails, then you can back it up with a graphical interface. So that's the interoperability. Let me tell you about 2 projects that we are actively working on. One of the really interesting uses of this natural language is access control. This idea that you can just have read or write access, that's really old school. What we need to do is a lot more complicated than that. So, for example, you may have heard of IFTTT, and you can put up a rule that says monitor your account. But in order to do that, you have to give that service your banking credentials, and that is really not acceptable. So what we would be able to say is that we selectively choose information that we want to share with different people under different time for under different conditions. And so, for example, the last one is kind of interesting, which just says that now we have all the face recognition software. It would be nice for me just to say that if the picture has my sister's face on it, share it with her. So these are all very natural things, but it is there is a lot of personalization and customization involved, and we are using the natural, we allow people to specify them in natural language using all the mechanisms that we have built up at this point. So that's one of the projects, and the second project I want to talk about, this is work in progress, and that is that we can now apply it to interesting applications that involves people and it involves information that is a lot more sensitive to privacy. So here is a scenario where you can imagine that a doctor wants to provide good care to a asthma patient. The doctor would like to say that you shouldn't run if a certain pollen count is high, and if your flow meter is below a certain threshold, inform me. One thing the doctor can do is to talk to the patients and say, these are the things that you can do. But with the virtual assistant, the doctor's virtual assistant can talk to the patient's virtual assistant and have the virtual assistants help the patient at the time based on the context. And they can provide very, very, very close communication between the doctor and the patients. In this way, not only do the patients get better care because you can now get real-time information to the patients, it is also extremely cost-effective because it is actually helped by these automated these agents. So let me summarize what we have talked about, and that is that I think it is very important that we have an open virtual assistant that allows you to plug in or interface to all the different kinds of services, IoTs, and so forth. And Almond is built on top of this open repository. It is open to anything. You can build different virtual assistants on top of that, and I think that that is really important for to keep these capability open to every vendor. And we talked about 3 research capabilities, and that is interoperability across things, how to provide access control. It is all going to be in natural language, and also interoperation across people, with healthcare being an example. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. Do we have questions for Monica? Right
here. I'm Atsushi from NC. Some of the mechanisms are quite similar to the IFTTT,
Yes.
which is a if-then-else type of the mechanism that you can get some sense information, then specify some of the mechanism to trigger to actuation, something like that. Except the natural language processing, what is a major difference between IFTTT and this virtual assistant?
Well, we definitely borrow from that abstraction. I think it is a very powerful abstraction. You say 2 sentences and it actually does a lot of work for you. There are several major differences. The first one is privacy. Okay, IFTTT is a proprietary system. They own all the interfaces. And for you to get any conditional execution or anything that touches your account, you have to give them your credentials. Okay, and we separated those 2 things. The interfaces is in the open repository, and your personal account is managed by Almond, the virtual assistant that can be run on anything. So that's the number 1 difference. Number 2 is that we are a superset. The when, do, and get with filters are actually much stronger than just the if and then that they have. Thirdly, they require you to do a web interface, and you have to hook up a rule, and then people can use that rule. But what we are doing here is that we map it into a end-user programming problem. Okay, you can specify any of these rules, and it dynamically compiles the code and executes according to that. So you can be talking about, as you use a virtual assistant, you can be referring to a rule that the system has never seen before, and it actually generates that code. And one of the reasons why we are able to do that is because we have a domain-specific language called ThinkTalk, as opposed to just a web interface putting things together. And a lot of the details, the difficulties in what we are doing is to provide the parameter mappings between one component to another. And that is actually pretty tricky. And I encourage you to come talk to our group. My students will be presenting a poster, and you can get into, you can look at the details there.
Great, thank you. I think we're going to have to leave it there for this afternoon. Thank you very much, Monica.
Thank you.